It was a cold, quiet morning in the small town of Bridgewood. Detective Anna Carter sat in her modest office, sipping her coffee as the sun crept over the horizon. Her routine was simple: arrive early, review reports, and prepare for the day ahead. But today was different. A knock on the door interrupted her peace, and Officer Daniels stepped inside, his face pale. "We've got a case," he said, handing her a file. "Emily Parker, 24 years old. She went missing last night." Anna quickly scanned the file. Emily was a local art student known for her talent and quiet demeanor. Her family had reported her missing when she didn't come home after her evening class. "What do we know so far?" Anna asked, already feeling the familiar spark of determination. "She was last seen near the old train station," Daniels replied. "Her car is still parked there, but there's no sign of her." Anna and Daniels drove to the train station, the cold air biting at their faces as they stepped out of the car. The station was abandoned, its walls covered in graffiti and its windows shattered. It was the kind of place most people avoided, especially at night. As they approached Emily's car, Anna noticed something unusual. The driver's door was slightly open, and a scarf lay on the ground nearby. "This must be hers," Anna said, picking it up carefully. It was a bright red scarf, the kind that would be hard to miss. She scanned the area, her sharp eyes catching a set of footprints leading away from the car. "Daniels, look at this," she said, pointing to the tracks. "They're fresh," Daniels observed. "Someone must have been here recently." Following the footprints, Anna and Daniels came across a man sitting on a bench near the station. He was hunched over, his hands stuffed into his coat pockets. As they approached, he looked up, his eyes wary. "Detective Carter," Anna introduced herself. "We're investigating a missing person. Did you see anything unusual here last night?" The man hesitated, his gaze darting to the side. "I might have," he said slowly. "I saw a woman arguing with someone near the station. A tall man, wearing a black hoodie." "Did you see where they went?" Anna pressed. "They headed toward the tracks," the man said. "But I didn't stick around. Didn't want any trouble." Anna's mind raced as they followed the tracks. The tall man in the black hoodie could be their suspect, but they needed more evidence. As they walked, Anna's eyes caught something shiny in the dirt. She bent down and picked up a silver locket. Opening it, she found a small photo inside, a picture of Emily smiling with her family. "This belongs to her," Anna said, her voice firm. She must have dropped it during the struggle. The discovery deepened the mystery. Who was the man in the hoodie, and why was Emily arguing with him? Anna knew they were only scratching the surface of a much larger puzzle. Their search led them to an old storage building near the edge of town. The door was ajar, and inside, the faint glow of a flashlight flickered. Anna motioned for Daniels to stay quiet as they entered, their footsteps light against the concrete floor. The room was cluttered with boxes and old furniture, but in the corner they found something chilling: a sketchbook. Flipping through the pages, Anna recognized Emily's style immediately. The sketches were dark, depicting shadowy figures and eerie scenes. On the last page, a single word was scrawled in bold letters: "Help." The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the danger was far from over. Anna could feel it in her gut. Whoever had taken Emily was still out there, watching, waiting. Anna sat in her car outside the storage building, her thoughts racing. The sketchbook was a clue, a window into Emily's world, but it also raised new questions. Who was the shadowy figure Emily had drawn? Was it the man in the black hoodie? Daniels broke the silence. "What do you think, detective? Could Emily have known her abductor?" Anna nodded slowly. It's possible. The drawings suggest she was afraid of someone, but we need more proof. They decided to dig into Emily's background, starting with her art class. Let's talk to her teacher, Anna said. Maybe they noticed something unusual. The art studio was quiet, the smell of paint lingering in the air. Emily's teacher, Ms. Harper, greeted them with a concerned expression. I heard about Emily, she said. This is terrible. She's such a talented student. Did you notice anything unusual about her recently? Anna asked. Did she mention anyone or seem worried? Ms. Harper hesitated. Well, a few weeks ago, she started staying late after class to work on a project. She said it was important, but she wouldn't tell me what it was. She seemed distracted. Do you know what she was working on? Daniels asked. Miss Harper shook her head. No, but she kept her sketches in her locker. Maybe you'll find something there. Back at the studio, Anna and Daniels opened Emily's locker. Inside, they found more sketches, each one more disturbing than the last. The shadowy figure appeared again and again, looming over Emily in different scenes. One sketch stood out, a detailed drawing of the train station. In the corner, Emily had written a date and timing: Friday, 8 p.m. This must be when she went missing, Daniel said. She planned to meet someone there. Anna studied the sketch closely. She wasn't just meeting someone, she said. She was scared. This was a trap. As they left the studio, Anna's phone buzzed. It was a call from an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Detective Carter. A deep voice replied, distorted and chilling. You're getting too close, detective. Stay out of this, or you'll regret it. The line went dead, leaving Anna gripping her phone tightly. Daniels looked at her, alarmed. What was that? Someone who doesn't want us to find Emily, Anna said grimly. But now we know we're on the right track. The team worked late into the night, piecing together what they had. The man in the hoodie was still their prime suspect, but now they had a time and place. Friday, 8 p.m. at the train station. Anna reviewed the security footage from nearby businesses. At 7:55 p.m., a black car pulled into the station's parking lot. A tall man got out, wearing a hoodie. Moments later, Emily arrived, her movements hesitant. The two exchanged words, and then the man grabbed her arm. He forced her into the car, Daniel said, his voice tense. Anna paused the footage. Look at the license plate. We've got him. Tracing the plate led them to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The building was dark, its windows boarded up. Anna and Daniels approached cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. Inside, they found more of Emily's belongings. A scarf, her sketchbook, and a notebook with cryptic notes. One phrase was repeated over and over: trust no one. Anna's gut told her they were close, but the danger was escalating. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to scare them. They were prepared to fight back. Anna and Daniels stood outside the warehouse, the eerie silence sending chills down their spines. They had backup on the way, but Anna couldn't wait. Every second mattered. Emily was running out of time. I don't like this, Daniels said. His voice was low, but the concern was clear. What if it's a trap? It is, Anna said, gripping her flashlight. But we don't have a choice. Emily's here. I can feel it. They pushed the heavy door open, the creak echoing through the empty halls. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of oil and rust. The warehouse was massive, with rows of crates stacked to the ceiling. Anna's flashlight scanned the area, landing on a piece of torn fabric caught on a nail. It was pink, the same color as Emily's jacket. She was here, Anna whispered. Daniels crouched down, picking up a small piece of paper from the floor. It was a drawing of the shadowy figure. This time, the figure had a knife. "This guy's taunting us," Daniels said. "He wants us to be scared." Anna shook her head. "No, this isn't just a game. This is his way of leaving a trail. He wants us to follow him." In the corner of the warehouse, they found a door leading to the basement. It was slightly ajar, the darkness beyond it impenetrable. "This has to be it," Anna said. Daniels hesitated. "We should wait for backup." Anna's jaw tightened. "We don't have time. If she's down there, we need to act now." She pulled out her weapon and nodded to Daniels. Together, they descended the narrow staircase, their footsteps echoing on the cold concrete. The basement was even larger than they'd expected, with dim overhead lights casting long shadows. As they moved deeper, they heard a faint sound, a muffled cry. "Emily," Anna called out. The cry grew louder. They followed it to a locked door. Daniels tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "It's locked," he said. Anna examined the lock. "Stand back." She fired at it, the sound deafening in the confined space. The door swung open, revealing a small room. Emily was inside, her hands tied and her face pale. She looked up them, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Help me," she whispered. As they freed Emily, a sudden noise behind them made Anna spin around. A figure stepped out of the shadows, the man in the hoodie. He held a gun, his face hidden. "Drop your weapons," he said, his voice cold and steady. Anna and Daniels exchanged a glance. They were trapped, but Anna wasn't ready to give up. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It's over. Let her go." The man laughed. "It's not over. This is just the beginning." Daniels slowly raised his hands, distracting the man while Anna inched closer. She saw her chance and lunged, knocking the gun from his hand. A struggle ensued, the two of them grappling in the dim light. "Get Emily out of here," Anna shouted to Daniels. Daniels grabbed Emily and led her toward the stairs. Anna fought with everything she had, finally pinning the man to the ground. "You're not going anywhere," she said, cuffing his hands behind his back. Outside, the flashing lights of police cars illuminated the night. Emily was safe, wrapped in a blanket and sitting in the back of an ambulance. Anna emerged from the warehouse, bruised but relieved. She looked at Emily and gave her a small smile. "You're safe now." Emily nodded, her voice trembling. "Thank you." The suspect sat in the interrogation room, his hands cuffed to the table. His hoodie had been removed, revealing a pale, unshaven face. He stared at the two-way mirror, a smirk playing on his lips. Anna stood behind the glass, watching him carefully. Daniels leaned against the wall beside her, his arms crossed. "He's too calm," Daniels said. "He thinks he's in control." Anna nodded. "Let's change that." She entered the room, her steps confident and deliberate. She placed a thick folder on the table and sat across from him. "You've been busy, haven't you?" The man chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Busy? I don't know what you're talking about." Anna opened the folder, revealing photos of Emily tied up in the basement. "You think this is a joke? You kidnapped a child. That's not something you can laugh off." He shrugged. "You're assuming I did it. Maybe someone else left her there." Anna's jaw tightened. "We have evidence. Your fingerprints on the lock, her description of you, and the trail you left. You wanted us to find her. Why?" The man leaned forward, his eyes glinting with malice. "Because it's fun. Watching you scramble, trying to play hero. It's pathetic." Outside the interrogation room, Daniels was reviewing Emily's statement. She had described the man in detail. His voice, his clothes, even the scar on his hand. Daniels re-entered the room, placing a small voice recorder on the table. "Emily remembered everything," he said. You didn't scare her enough to forget? The man's smirk faltered for a brief moment, but he quickly recovered. Kids have wild imaginations. You can't trust what they say. Anna leaned closer, her voice low and steady. She's braver than you'll ever be, and she's going to help us put you away for a long time. Hours passed, and the interrogation continued. The man refused to admit anything, but Anna noticed cracks in his demeanor. His hands fidgeted, and he avoided her gaze whenever Emily's name was mentioned. Finally, she decided to shift her approach. You didn't start with Emily, did you? She asked, her tone softer. There were others. People you hurt, lives you destroyed. Why? He stiffened, his smirk vanishing. You don't know anything about me. Anna leaned back, crossing her arms. Maybe I don't. But I know you're not as confident as you pretend to be. People like you always slip up. As they dug deeper into his past, Anna and Daniels uncovered more disturbing details. He had a record. Small offenses at first, but they escalated over the years. Theft, assault, stalking. Anna brought up one of his earlier victims, a young woman who had narrowly escaped his clutches. She described you the same way Emily did, Anna said. You're a predator, and now you've been caught. The man's composure cracked. He slammed his hands on the table, glaring at Anna. You don't understand! They deserved it! Anna didn't flinch. Deserved what? Tell me. His outburst was the break they needed. Over the next hour, he spilled everything, his frustrations, his twisted justifications, and his plans for Emily. She wasn't supposed to be found. He admitted, his voice shaking. Not yet. I wanted more time. Anna's stomach turned, but she kept her focus. Time for what? To show the world how blind they are, he said. People like me were invisible. But not anymore. With his confession recorded, Anna and Daniels left the room. The weight of the case settled on Anna's shoulders as she walked down the hall. Daniels placed a hand on her shoulder. You did it. Emily's safe, and he's going away for life. Anna nodded, though the victory felt bittersweet. One less monster on the streets, she said. But there are always more. As they exited the station, the morning sun was rising. Anna looked up at the sky, determined to keep fighting for justice. The news of the arrest spread quickly, with headlines praising the police for rescuing Emily and catching the kidnapper. But for Anna, the case didn't feel over. She sat at her desk, looking at the evidence board. Photos of Emily, the suspect, and other loose ends stared back at her. Daniels walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. You should take a break, he said, placing one in front of her. The case is closed. He confessed. Anna sipped her coffee, shaking her head. There's something we're missing. He said Emily wasn't supposed to be found yet. What was he planning? Meanwhile, Emily was safe at home with her parents. She was quieter than usual, her big eyes filled with thoughts she couldn't put into words. Her mother sat beside her on the couch, brushing her hair. It's okay now. Sweetie, her mother whispered. You're safe. Emily nodded but didn't speak. She clutched a small teddy bear that Anna had given her at the station. Her father knelt in front of her. Do you remember anything else, Emily? Anything about that man? Emily hesitated, then whispered. He talked about other kids. He said I was lucky. Back at the station, Daniels replayed the suspect's confession. Anna was right. There was more to his plan. He wanted to send a message, Daniels said, leaning back in his chair. Anna stared at the board, her mind racing. He didn't just want attention. He wanted to prove something. What if Emily was just the beginning? They pulled up missing person reports from the last year, focusing on cases with similar patterns. The results were chilling. 3 other children had gone missing in the same area, all around the same age. Anna and Daniels worked late into the night, piecing together a timeline. The suspects' movements, the locations of the kidnappings, and the commonalities between the victims painted a grim picture. "He's not working alone," Anna said, her voice firm. "There's a bigger operation here." Emily was just one piece of their puzzle. Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "If that's true, then we need to find the others. Fast." They requested a warrant to search the suspect's home again, focusing on hidden compartments or digital records. The second search yielded a breakthrough. Hidden behind a loose floorboard, they found a notebook filled with names, dates, and coordinates. Each name was crossed out except for Emily's. Anna's heart sank as she flipped through the pages. These are his targets, the ones he took, and the ones he didn't get to yet. Daniels pointed at the coordinates. These could be drop-off points or safe houses. We need to act now. With the help of a special task force, Anna and Daniels led a raid on one of the locations listed in the notebook. The abandoned warehouse was eerily quiet as they entered, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. In the far corner, they found 2 children locked in a small room. They were scared but unharmed. Anna knelt down, her voice gentle. "You're safe now. We're here to take you home." As the team secured the area, Anna felt a surge of relief. But she knew their work wasn't over. Back at the station, Emily's parents brought her to visit Anna. Emily ran up to her, hugging her tightly. "Thank you for saving me," she said softly. Anna smiled, kneeling to meet her eyes. "You're very brave, Emily. You helped us save others, too." As Emily left with her parents, Anna felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever. She turned to Daniels, determination in her eyes. "We're not done yet. Let's find the rest of them." Daniels nodded, his expression serious. "Let's bring them all home." Amelia loved her little flower shop, nestled on the quiet corner of Pine Street. Every morning, she unlocked the door, inhaling the fresh scent of roses, lilies, and daisies. The shop was her safe space, filled with vibrant colors and soothing fragrances. She often lost herself in arranging blooms, creating beauty in the simplest of ways. Today started like any other. The morning sun filtered through the windows, casting a golden glow over the shelves. Amelia arranged a display of pink tulips when the familiar jingle of the doorbell startled her. She looked up to see a tall man step inside, his confident stride catching her attention immediately. He wore a sharp navy suit, the kind that screamed power and wealth. His shoes were polished, his hair neatly styled, but his expression was tense, almost impatient. For a moment, Amelia froze, unsure whether to greet him or let him approach first. The man's piercing blue eyes scanned the shop before landing on her. "I need a bouquet," he said abruptly, his voice firm and authoritative. Amelia blinked, slightly taken aback by his directness. "Of course," she replied, forcing a smile. "What kind of bouquet are you looking for?" The man sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Something elegant, but not overly flashy. It's for a business meeting," he added, almost as an afterthought. Amelia nodded, stepping toward the cooler to pick out flowers. She worked quickly, selecting white lilies, green hydrangeas, and soft eucalyptus leaves. As she arranged the bouquet, she could feel his gaze following her every movement. It wasn't just a casual glance, it was sharp, analytical, as though he were trying to figure her out. "Busy day?" she asked, hoping to break the silence. He shrugged, his jaw tightening. "You could say that," he replied curtly. Amelia bit her lip, sensing that he wasn't the chatty type. When she handed him the finished bouquet, his fingers brushed hers briefly, sending an unexpected jolt through her. She quickly withdrew her hand, hiding her reaction. "This should be perfect," she said, her voice steady. He inspected the arrangement, nodding in approval. "Thank you," he said, handing over his credit card. His tone was more sincere this time, softer even. Amelia processed the payment, her curiosity about this stranger growing. Before she could say anything else, he turned to leave, the bouquet in hand. As the door closed behind him, the bell jingled once more. Amelia stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where he had been. Something about him lingered in her mind, a strange mix of intrigue and irritation. What a charmer, she muttered under her breath, shaking her head. She turned back to her work, not realizing that this brief encounter would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Later that day, Amelia found herself glancing at the door whenever the bell rang. It was silly, she thought, to wonder if he might come back. After all, he was just another customer. But something about him, his intensity, his presence, had left an impression. As the evening approached, Amelia closed up the shop, the mysterious man still on her mind. She told herself to forget about him, but deep down, she knew that this was only the beginning. The next morning, Amelia opened her shop as usual, the scent of fresh blooms filling the air. She busied herself with arranging new bouquets, her hands moving instinctively as her mind wandered. She couldn't shake the image of the mysterious man from the day before. As the hours passed, customers came and went, but none held her interest for long. She glanced at the clock. It was nearly noon. Just as she was about to head to the back room for a quick break, the doorbell jingled. She looked up, and there he was. This time, he wasn't in a suit. He wore a light gray sweater and dark jeans, his demeanor noticeably more relaxed. Amelia felt her heart skip a beat, but she quickly composed herself. "Back for more flowers?" she asked, trying to sound casual. The man offered a small smile. The tension in his face from yesterday noticeably softened. "Actually, yes," he said, stepping closer to the counter. "But this time, it's personal, not business." Amelia raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his sudden change in tone. "I need something special," he continued, his voice quieter now. "Let's for my mother's birthday. She loves flowers, and I thought I'd surprise her." Amelia's heart warmed at his words. The idea of this seemingly stoic man going out of his way for his mother was endearing. "What's her favorite flower?" Amelia asked, grabbing a notepad to jot down ideas. The man hesitated, his brow furrowing slightly. "Roses?" he said after a moment. "Pink ones, I think." Amelia nodded, already envisioning the bouquet. As she worked, she decided to make conversation. "I don't think I caught your name yesterday," she said, glancing up at him. He seemed taken aback for a moment before replying. "It's Ethan." "And you're Amelia?" she said with a smile. "Nice to officially meet you, Ethan." He nodded, his lips curving into a slight smile. For a moment, they held each other's gaze before Amelia returned her focus to the bouquet. She carefully arranged the pink roses, adding white baby's breath and delicate greenery for contrast. The bouquet was simple yet elegant, perfect for a birthday gift. When she finished, she handed it to Ethan, who examined it with quiet appreciation. "This is perfect," he said, his voice sincere. "Thank you, Amelia." She felt a strange warmth at hearing her name from his lips, but she brushed it off. "You're welcome," she replied. "I hope your mom loves it." As he paid, Ethan hesitated, as if he wanted to say something else. Amelia waited, her curiosity growing. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Do you always work here alone?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes intense. Most of the time, Amelia said, shrugging. It's my shop, so I like being here. Why do you ask? Ethan seemed to consider his words carefully before answering. Just seems like a lot to handle on your own, he said, his gaze flickering around the shop. Amelia smiled, touched by his concern. It can be, but I love it. Flowers make people happy, and that makes it all worth it. Ethan nodded, a thoughtful look crossing his face. Well, if you ever need an extra pair of hands, let me know, he said, surprising her. I'm not great with flowers, but I can learn. Amelia laughed, the sound light and genuine. You'll keep that in mind, she said, her smile lingering. Ethan left shortly after, the bouquet in hand. Amelia watched him go, a strange mix of emotions swirling within her. There was something about him, something she couldn't quite put into words. Over the next few days, Ethan became a regular visitor at the shop. Sometimes he came to buy flowers, and other times he simply stopped by to chat. Each visit brought them closer, their conversations growing longer and more personal. Amelia learned that Ethan was a successful architect with a passion for designing homes. He told her about his childhood, his travels, and his dreams for the future. In turn, she shared her own story. How she had inherited the flower shop from her grandmother and how it had become her sanctuary. The more they talked, the more Amelia found herself looking forward to his visits. She tried to remind herself that he was just a customer, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan's visits to the flower shop became Amelia's favorite moments. Whenever the doorbell jingled, her heart leaped with hope. Most times, it was him, walking in with his charming smile and easy demeanor. One chilly afternoon, Ethan arrived holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. Amelia looked up from a bouquet she was arranging and laughed. Coffee delivery, she asked, her tone playful. He grinned, setting the cups on the counter. You looked like you could use a break, he said. You're always working so hard in here. The warmth of the coffee matched the warmth that filled Amelia's heart. Their conversations flowed effortlessly. Ethan shared stories of his architectural projects, while Amelia talked about her favorite flowers and the customers who loved them. They laughed often, a bond quietly forming between them. One day, Ethan noticed a photo on the wall. It was of Amelia as a child, holding a bouquet of daisies. Is that you? He asked, stepping closer to examine it. The memories that shape us, Amelia nodded, a nostalgic smile spreading across her face. That's me and my grandmother, she said. She taught me everything I know about flowers. This shop was her dream, and now it's mine. Ethan studied the pride and sadness in her expression. She must have been an amazing woman, he said softly. She was, Amelia replied. I just hope I'm making her proud. Her voice carried a vulnerability that made Ethan's admiration for her grow. You are, Ethan said, with conviction. This place is beautiful, and so are the things you create. Anyone who walks in can feel the love you've poured into it. His words touched Amelia deeply, leaving her momentarily speechless. Instead of replying, she simply smiled, her cheeks warming under his gaze. For the first time, let's get started, she realized how much she looked forward to Ethan's presence in her world. Unspoken secrets as their friendship grew. Amelia started wondering about Ethan's life outside the shop. He rarely mentioned his personal life, and she hesitated to pry. But one day, her curiosity won. Ethan, she began, her hands busy arranging lilies. You never talk about your family. Besides your mom, is there anyone close to you? Ethan's cheerful demeanor faded. He looked down, his expression guarded. There was someone, he said after a pause. But it didn't work out. Amelia sensed the weight of his words and chose not to push further. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "I didn't mean to bring up anything painful." "It's okay," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. Some things aren't meant to be. But Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story. A story he wasn't ready to share. A token of friendship, the next morning, Amelia decided to brighten Ethan's day. She created a small arrangement of yellow roses, symbolizing friendship and new beginnings. When Ethan arrived later, she handed it to him with a shy smile. "What's this for?" he asked, surprised by the gesture. "Just a thank you," Amelia said simply. "For all the coffee, the stories, and just for being you." Ethan looked at the bouquet, his expression softening. "You didn't have to do this," he said, though his voice was full of gratitude. "I wanted to," Amelia replied. Their eyes met for a brief moment, unspoken emotions hanging in the air. "Thank you," Ethan said sincerely. "It means a lot." As he left with the flowers, Amelia felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, their paths were meant to intertwine in ways neither of them had imagined. As winter settled in, the flower shop became a haven of warmth and color amidst the cold. Ethan's visit continued, each one bringing a sense of comfort to Amelia's days. The snow piled high outside, but inside their connection grew like a delicate bud finding the light. One snowy evening, Amelia decided to close early. She stepped outside to lock the door, only to find Ethan waiting on the sidewalk. He held a scarf in his hand. "You forgot this at the coffee shop yesterday," he said, smiling sheepishly. Amelia laughed, taking the scarf from him. "Thank you," she said. "You're becoming my personal lost and found service." The playful banter felt natural, as if they'd known each other for years. Ethan hesitated before speaking again. "Are you free tonight? There's a new exhibit at the art gallery downtown. I thought it might be something you'd like." Amelia blinked in surprise, her heart skipping a beat. "That sounds lovely," she said. "Let me grab my coat." An evening of discovery, the art gallery glowed with soft lights and murmurs of conversation. Ethan and Amelia strolled through the exhibits, their footsteps echoing on the polished floors. Ethan pointed out architectural pieces, while Amelia admired paintings of nature that reminded her of the flowers she loved. They paused in front of a sculpture, its lines flowing like petals in the wind. "It's beautiful," Amelia whispered, her voice full of awe. "It reminds me of you," Ethan said softly. Amelia turned to him, her cheeks warming. She searched his face for signs of teasing, but found only sincerity. "Thank you," she replied, her voice barely audible. She looked away, feeling the rush of emotions she wasn't quite ready to name. A moment of vulnerability as they left the gallery, the cold air wrapped around like a blanket. Ethan offered his arm, and Amelia took it, grateful for the warmth. They walked in silence, the snow crunching beneath their feet. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said after a while, his voice tentative. "Of course," Amelia replied. "Why flowers?" he asked. "Out of all the things you could do, why run a flower shop?" Amelia thought for a moment, her breath visible in the frosty air. "Because flowers make people happy," she said. "They're simple, but they carry so much meaning. I like being part of people's special moments, even if it's just in a small way." Ethan nodded, his admiration for her growing. "That's beautiful," he said. "You're amazing, Amelia." The confession, by the time they reached Amelia's shop, the streets were quiet, the world blanketed in snow. Ethan hesitated, his hands buried in his coat pockets. "I've been meaning to tell you something," he said, his voice low. Amelia turned to him, her heart pounding. "What is it?" she asked. though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. "I didn't just stumble into your shop that day," Ethan admitted. "I saw it on my way to work and kept thinking about it. Something about you drew me in, and now I can't imagine not being here." Amelia's breath caught. She searched his face for signs of jest, but found only earnestness. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say I can keep coming back," Ethan said, a hopeful smile tugging at his lips. Amelia felt a warmth spread through her chest. "You can," she said simply. Unspoken promises as Ethan walked away that night. Amelia stood in the doorway of her shop, watching his figure disappear into the falling snow. Her heart was full, her thoughts swirling with emotions she could no longer deny. Inside, she looked at the bouquet of yellow roses he had left behind weeks ago. She smiled, knowing that their story was only just beginning. The days that followed were filled with a quiet anticipation. Amelia and Ethan fell into an unspoken rhythm. He visited the flower shop almost daily, sometimes with a cup of coffee, other times just to say hello. Each visit brought new stories, shared laughter, and the unspoken understanding that their lives were becoming intertwined. One morning, Ethan arrived with a bouquet of his own. It wasn't grand or elaborate, just a handful of wildflowers tied together with twine. "These reminded me of you," he said, handing them to Amelia. She took them, her heart fluttering. "They're beautiful," she said, her fingers brushing his as she accepted the bouquet. She set them in a vase near the counter, their vibrant colors brightening the shop. A special invitation that evening, as Amelia was closing the shop, Ethan appeared at the door. "Do you have plans tomorrow night?" he asked, his voice tinged with excitement. Amelia shook her head. "Not yet." "Why?" "There's a winter festival in the park," he said. "There will be lights, music, and food stalls. I thought maybe we could go together." Amelia smiled. "I'd love to," she said. The next night, they met at the park, where twinkling lights hung from trees, and the scent of roasted chestnuts filled the air. They wandered from stall to stall, sampling treats and laughing like children. Under a canopy of lights, Ethan stopped and turned to Amelia. "This is perfect," he said, his eyes soft as they met hers. "It is," Amelia agreed, her cheeks flushed from the cold and the warmth of his gaze. The first kiss as the evening drew to a close. They found themselves standing by a frozen pond. The world around them was quiet, save for the distant hum of music and laughter. Ethan took a step closer to Amelia. "I never expected this," he said. "Meeting you has been the best surprise of my life." Amelia felt her heart swell. "Me too," she said. "You've made my days brighter, Ethan." He smiled, reaching for her hand. For a moment they stood in silence, their breaths visible in the frosty air. Then, slowly, Ethan leaned in, and Amelia closed the distance between them. Their first kiss was gentle, sweet, and full of unspoken promises, building a future from that moment on. Their relationship blossomed. They spent their days exploring the city, sharing their dreams, and supporting each other's passions. Ethan often helped out at the flower shop, learning the names of the blooms and laughing at his clumsy attempts at arranging bouquets. Amelia, in turn, accompanied Ethan on architectural tours, marveling at his ability to see beauty in even the smallest details. Together, they inspired each other to dream bigger and cherish life's simple joys. The grand gesture one crisp spring morning, Ethan walked into the flower shop with a peculiar look on his face. "Close the shop for the day," he said, holding out a note. Amelia looked at him quizzically, but followed his lead. He led her to the park, where they'd shared their first kiss. Under the same canopy of lights, he handed her a bouquet of yellow roses. "Amelia," he said, his voice steady. "You've brought so much love and light into my life. I don't ever want to let it go. Will you marry me?" Amelia's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. Happily ever after, their wedding was a celebration of love, held in the flower shop that had brought them together. Surrounded by family, friends, and the blooms that told their story, they promised to cherish each other forever. As they danced under the twinkling lights, Amelia looked up at Ethan and smiled. "I think this is the happiest ending I could ever imagine," she said. Ethan laughed, pulling her close. "It's just the beginning," he replied. And together, they stepped into a future filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. It is early in the morning. The sun is rising and the sky is light blue. Emma wakes up in her cozy bed. She stretches her arms and yawns. "Good morning," she says softly to herself. The birds are singing outside her window. Emma gets out of bed and puts on her slippers. She walks to the bathroom. In the mirror, she sees her sleepy face. She smiles and brushes her teeth. The toothpaste is minty and fresh. "No, I feel awake," she says. After brushing her teeth, Emma washes her face with warm water. The water feels nice on her skin. She dries her face with a soft towel. Then she combs her hair. Her hair is shiny and smooth. She looks ready to start her day. Emma walks to the kitchen. She is hungry, so she makes breakfast. First, she takes out bread, eggs, and milk. She toasts the bread and cooks the eggs. The smell of food fills the kitchen. "This smells so good," Emma says. Emma sits at the table to eat her breakfast. She takes a bite of the toast. It is crispy and warm. She drinks a glass of milk. It is cold and fresh. While eating, she looks outside the window. The sun is shining, and the day looks beautiful. After breakfast, Emma washes her dishes. She rinses the plates and cups with water. Then, she dries them with a clean towel. She likes to keep her kitchen tidy. "A clean kitchen is a happy kitchen," she says with a smile. Emma puts on her favorite clothes for the day. She chooses a blue dress and comfortable shoes. She looks in the mirror and smiles. "I feel good today," she says. She picks up her bag and checks her list for the day. She walks to the door and opens it. The fresh morning air greets her. She takes a deep breath and feels happy. "Today is going to be a great day," Emma says. She steps outside and starts her morning walk. Emma walks through the park near her house. The grass is green and soft. Children are playing on the swings, and people are walking their dogs. Emma waves to a neighbor and says, "Good morning." As Emma walks, she hears the sound of the wind in the trees. She sees flowers in different colors, red, yellow, and pink. She stops for a moment to smell a rose. It smells sweet and nice. Emma continues her walk and feels the sun on her face. She feels happy and full of energy. "What a lovely morning," she thinks. She enjoys every step of her walk and feels ready for the rest of her day. After her walk, Emma returns home. She feels energized and ready to do her chores. First, she takes off her shoes and puts them neatly by the door. She washes her hands with soap and water. The soap smells like flowers. Emma goes to the living room to clean. She picks up a duster and wipes the furniture. The table, the shelves, and the TV stand all look shiny now. She hums a little tune while she cleans. "Cleaning can be fun," she says. Next, Emma picks up a broom to sweep the floor. She sweeps every corner carefully. The sound of the broom moving on the floor is soft and rhythmic. "I like a clean house," Emma says to herself. Emma collects the trash from the bins. She ties the trash bag and takes it outside. The trash truck is coming soon. She waves at the driver and says, "Thank you for your hard work." The driver smiles and waves back. After cleaning, Emma goes to her small garden. She has plants in pots near her window. The flowers are bright and colorful. Emma takes her watering can and waters the plants. Plants need water to grow, she says. She also checks the soil in her vegetable pots. The tomatoes are growing well. Emma feels proud of her little garden. Soon I can use these tomatoes for cooking, she thinks. She smiles and feels happy about her hard work. Now it is time for Emma to plan her day. She sits at her desk with her notebook. She writes a list of tasks she needs to do. 1. Go to the store. 2. Call mom. 3. Read a book. She adds a few more tasks and feels organized. Emma decides to call her mom first. She picks up the phone and dials the number. "Hi, Mom," she says cheerfully. They talk for a while. Emma tells her mom about her morning walk and her garden. Her mom sounds happy to hear from her. After the call, Emma gets ready to go to the store. She takes her shopping bag and her list. The store is not far from her house, so she decides to walk. She puts on her hat and steps outside again. On her way to the store, Emma sees many people. She smiles at them and says, "Hello." The street is busy, but everyone seems friendly. Emma enjoys looking at the shop windows as she walks. When she reaches the store, Emma takes a cart. She pushes it carefully down the aisles. She looks at her list and picks out what she needs. Bread, milk, eggs, and some vegetables go into her cart. At the checkout, Emma greets the cashier. "Good morning," she says with a smile. The cashier smiles back and says, "Good morning. Did you find everything you need?" Emma nods and thanks the cashier. Emma carries her bags and walks home. The sun is higher in the sky now, and it feels warm. She enjoys the walk and looks forward to lunch. "I think I will make a salad today," she thinks. When Emma gets home, she puts away the groceries. She arranges the fruits and vegetables neatly in the fridge. She washes her hands again and starts preparing lunch. She feels proud of how much she has done this morning. Emma begins preparing her lunch. She takes out fresh vegetables from the frigid lettuce, tomatoes, and cucumbers. She washes them carefully under running water. Clean vegetables make a healthy meal, she says to herself. She cuts the vegetables into small pieces. The knife moves slowly and safely as she slices the tomatoes. Emma loves the bright red color of the tomatoes. This will be a delicious salad, she thinks. Next, she adds a pinch of salt and a drizzle of olive oil. She mixes everything in a big bowl. The salad looks fresh and colorful. Emma takes a fork and tastes a small bite. "Yum," she says with a big smile. To complete her lunch, Emma makes a sandwich. She spreads some butter on bread and adds cheese. She puts the sandwich on a plate next to her salad. "A simple lunch is the best," she says happily. Emma sits at the dining table to eat. She enjoys every bite of her meal. The salad is crunchy and the sandwich is soft and tasty. She drinks a glass of water and feels refreshed. This is a good day, she thinks. After lunch, Emma clears the table. She rinses her plate and glass in the sink. She likes keeping her kitchen clean. The sound of running water is calming to her. "A clean space makes me happy," she says. Now, Emma has some free time. She decides to read a book. She chooses a storybook from her shelf. The book has many pictures and simple words. Emma loves reading stories about adventures and faraway places. She sits on her couch and opens the book. The first page has a picture of a big ship on the ocean. Emma imagines herself on the ship, traveling to new lands. She feels excited as she reads each page. The story is about a girl named Lily who finds a treasure map. Emma reads about Lily's adventures on the island. She smiles and laughs at the funny parts. She feels like she is part of the story. After finishing a few chapters, Emma takes a break. She stretches her arms and stands up. It's time to go outside again, she thinks. She loves spending time in the fresh air. Emma decides to visit the park near her house. She changes into comfortable shoes and grabs a small bag. Inside the bag, she puts a water bottle and her favorite snack. She is ready for an afternoon walk. At the park, Emma sees children playing. They are running and laughing. Their happiness makes Emma smile. She walks along the path and listens to the birds singing in the trees. Emma finds a bench and sits down. She takes a deep breath and feels the cool breeze on her face. She enjoys watching the people around her. Some are jogging, and some are walking their dogs. She takes out her snack, a small box of grapes. Emma eats them one by one, enjoying their sweet taste. She drinks some water and feels refreshed. This is a peaceful moment, she thinks. Before leaving the park, Emma decides to take some photos. She uses her phone to capture the flowers and trees. The colors are so bright and beautiful. Emma loves keeping memories of special places. Emma heads home as the sun begins to set. The sky turns orange and pink. What a lovely afternoon, she says to herself. She feels calm and happy after her time at the park. When Emma gets home, she takes off her shoes and puts them neatly by the door. She drinks a glass of water and thinks about the rest of her day. She feels thankful for the simple joys in life. As the evening begins, Emma feels ready to relax. She changes into her comfortable home clothes. The soft fabric makes her feel cozy. Evenings are my favorite time to unwind, she thinks. Emma walks to her living room and switches on a small lamp. The warm light makes the room feel calm and peaceful. She sits on her couch and decides to watch her favorite show on TV. The show is about animals in the wild. Emma watches as a group of elephants walk through a forest. She loves learning about nature and enjoys the soft, soothing voice of the narrator. While watching the show, Emma starts to feel hungry. She pauses the TV and goes to the kitchen. It's time to make dinner, she says with a smile. She opens her fridge to check what she has. Emma decides to make pasta for dinner. She fills a pot with water and places it on the stove. The water begins to boil, and she adds a handful of pasta. The steam rises, and the kitchen smells warm and inviting. As the pasta cooks, Emma prepares the sauce. She heats some oil in a pan and adds chopped onions and garlic. The sizzle of the pan makes her feel like a chef. Cooking is so much fun, she says to herself. Next, Emma adds tomatoes and a pinch of salt. She stirs the sauce slowly, letting it cook until it becomes thick and rich. The smell fills the kitchen, making her even hungrier. When the pasta is ready, Emma drains the water and adds the pasta to the sauce. She mixes them together, making sure every piece is coated. She sprinkles some cheese on top for extra flavor. Emma sets the table with a plate, a fork, and a glass of water. She sits down and takes her first bite of the pasta. It tastes creamy and delicious. This is the perfect dinner, she thinks happily. As she eats, Emma thinks about her day. She feels proud of all the small things she accomplished. Today was simple but special, she says to herself with a smile. After finishing her meal, Emma cleans the kitchen. She washes the dishes and wipes the counters. She enjoys ending her day in a clean and tidy space. With dinner done, Emma makes herself a cup of tea. She chooses a mint tea bag and places it in a cup of hot water. The smell of mint fills the room. She carries her tea to the living room. Emma sits by the window and sips her tea slowly. She watches the stars twinkling in the night sky. The cool breeze from the open window feels refreshing. To relax further, Emma decides to read a few more pages of her book. She picks it up from the couch and opens to where she left off. The story of Lily finding the treasure keeps her hooked. Emma laughs at a funny part in the story and feels connected to the characters. Reading is one of her favorite ways to end the day. Books are like magic, she thinks. As the clock strikes 9, Emma starts to feel sleepy. She puts the book down and stretches. "It's time to get ready for bed," she says softly. Emma goes to her bathroom to brush her teeth. She looks at herself in the mirror and smiles. "Good night, Emma," she says with a little laugh. She changes into her pajamas, which are soft and warm. She turns off the lights in her house, leaving only a small nightlight on in her bedroom. Emma gets into bed and pulls the blanket over herself. The bed feels soft and comforting. She closes her eyes and takes a deep breath. Before falling asleep, Emma thinks about tomorrow. Another new day, another chance to enjoy life, she whispers to herself. With that thought, she drifts off to sleep peacefully. The night is quiet, and Emma sleeps peacefully in her cozy bed. Outside, the moon shines brightly, casting a soft glow over her small garden. The gentle rustling of leaves creates a calming sound. Emma dreams of a beautiful place she has never seen before. In her dream, she is walking on a sandy beach. The sand is warm under her feet, and the waves gently touch her toes. She feels happy and free. In her dream, she meets a friendly dog. The dog wags its tail and runs beside her. Emma laughs as she plays fetch with the dog. She throws a stick, and the dog brings it back every time. The dream becomes even more magical. Emma finds a small wooden boat by the shore. She steps into the boat, and it starts to move gently across the water. The ocean sparkles like diamonds under the moonlight. As she looks around, Emma sees an island in the distance. The island is full of colorful flowers and tall trees. Birds sing sweetly in the background. It feels like a perfect, peaceful world. On the island, Emma meets kind people who welcome her with smiles. They offer her fresh fruits like mangoes, bananas, and coconuts. She tastes the sweet fruit and feels so happy. Suddenly, Emma hears a soft sound calling her name. It feels warm and comforting, like a whisper in the wind. The sound gets louder, and she slowly wakes up from her dream. Emma opens her eyes and looks around her bedroom. The nightlight grows softly, and everything feels calm and safe. She takes a deep breath and remembers her dream. What a wonderful dream, Emma says to herself. She feels grateful for the magical moments in her mind. Dreams like this make her night special and exciting. Emma looks at her bedside clock. It is still early in the morning, so she decides to stay in bed a little longer. She pulls her blanket closer and closes her eyes again. As she lies in bed, she thinks about all the things she will do the next day. She plans to take a walk in the park, call her best friend, and try a new recipe for lunch. The thought of a new day makes Emma feel excited. Every day is a gift, she thinks. She decides to write about her dream in her journal when she wakes up. Emma slowly drifts back to sleep. This time, she dreams of flying through the sky like a bird. She feels the wind on her face and sees the world from above. It is another peaceful and happy dream. The night passes quietly, and soon the first rays of sunlight peek through Emma's window. The light falls on her face, gently waking her up. She stretches and yawns. Emma gets out of bed feeling fresh and rested. She opens the window to let in the morning air. The smell of flowers and the sound of chirping birds fill her room. "Good morning, world," Emma says with a smile. She feels ready to start her day. She makes her bed neatly and heads to the kitchen to prepare her morning tea. As Emma sips her tea, she thinks about her dream again. She decides to share it with her friend later. Dreams make life more colorful, she says to herself. Emma starts her morning routine, feeling thankful for the peaceful night and sweet dreams. She knows that every day is a chance to enjoy life and make it meaningful. With a happy heart and a calm mind, Emma begins her day. She feels ready to embrace whatever comes her way, one small moment at a time. My sister kicked me out of the family business, so I built my own. Now they beg me to come back. I can still hear my sister's voice echoing in my head. "We don't need you here," she said, as if everything we had built, everything Mom and Dad had sacrificed, meant nothing. I was standing there, my heart pounding, trying to comprehend what was happening. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a betrayal, a cold, calculated move that I never saw coming. Growing up, I was always in her shadow. I was the quieter one, the one who stayed behind the scenes while she took the spotlight. It never bothered me much at first. I didn't mind being the support system. I loved the family business and wanted to contribute, just like everyone else. But over the years, I started to realize something. My sister wasn't just competing with me for attention. She was actively pushing me aside. I remember when I first entered the family business. I was just out of college, eager to show my parents that I had the skills to help grow the company. I had spent 4 years studying, learning new ways to innovate and expand, and I was ready. But when I walked into that office for the first time, it felt like I was a stranger in my own home. There she was, my sister, sitting at Dad's desk, wearing his old chair like she owned it. It was one thing to be ambitious, but the way she looked at me, the way she barely acknowledged my presence, made me feel like I didn't matter. I tried to keep my head down, to take the back seat and wait my turn. But deep down, I knew this wasn't what I had imagined. This wasn't the family business I was supposed to inherit. The tension started to build the more I tried to contribute. Every idea I brought to the table was shot down. Every suggestion was dismissed like it was worthless. I was constantly being told, "That's not how we do things here," or "We've always done it this way." My sister took every opportunity to undermine me, making sure I never had a chance to rise above the helper position. And the worst part, our parents didn't seem to notice. They were too caught up in her charisma, her ability to charm them into thinking she was the right one for the job. I couldn't even get a word in. But that day, the day she told me I didn't belong, was different. It was the breaking point. I could no longer ignore the fact that she was sabotaging me, that she didn't care about our shared future. She didn't even care about the legacy that Mom and Dad had worked so hard to build. To her, it was all about control, about being the one at the top. I remember walking out of that office for the last time. There was no drama, no shouting. I didn't cry or beg. I just left. But in that moment, something inside of me shifted. I wasn't just walking away from a business. I was walking away from a family that had never truly believed in me. They had seen me as nothing more than a backup plan, a second choice, the quiet one who could be easily overlooked. But I wasn't going to let that define me. I packed up my things, got in my car, and drove away. I had no clear plan. All I knew was that I couldn't go back. I would never return to that office, never let my sister or anyone else dictate my future. I started from scratch. The next few months were hard. No one wants to hear about the struggles, the failures, or the nights spent awake, trying to make ends meet. But I kept pushing. I worked 12-hour days, made deals, took risks, and kept my head down. And slowly, my new business began to grow. I had no support, no family to back me up, but I didn't need them. I was building something of my own, a company that would prove I could make it without them. It was grueling. I didn't have the resources they did. No inherited connections. No trust fund to fall back on. Just raw determination. There were days I felt like giving up. Days when the weight of what I had lost, the family, the business, my place in it, seemed unbearable. But then I would remember how they had treated me, how they had dismissed me as if I was nothing. I couldn't let that be the final chapter of my story. So I kept working, And as the months turned into years, something miraculous happened. My business flourished. It didn't just succeed, it thrived. I started to make a name for myself, not just in our industry, but in the business world. People took notice. They were amazed at what I had built from the ground up. And I knew in my heart that my success wasn't just for me. It was a statement, a loud, defiant statement that I didn't need them to succeed. I could stand on my own 2 feet, and I was damn good at it. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I had feared for so long. My sister showed up at my door. I didn't know it then, but I could feel something was wrong the moment I saw her face. She didn't even have the courage to call me first. She just appeared, standing there in front of my office building, looking smaller than I had ever seen her before. "I need your help," she said, her voice breaking. There was no arrogance in it now, just desperation. "The business is failing. I don't know how to fix it. You're the only one who can save us." I froze. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. All the anger, all the frustration, all the memories of being pushed aside rushed back in a wave. This was the sister who had destroyed everything. The one who had torn our family apart. Who had pushed me out without a second thought. And now she was begging me for help. I let her sit in silence for what felt like an eternity. She looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat, knowing she was on the edge of begging. Her pride had crumbled. The facade was gone, and as much as I wanted to give in, as much as a part of me wanted to be the bigger person, I knew I couldn't. "You had your chance," I finally said, my voice steady, though it was shaking inside. "You kicked me out. You wanted to do it on your own. You made it clear you didn't need me. So don't come here now asking for my help. You made your bed. Now you lie in it." But the silence that followed was suffocating. I could see her fighting to hold back tears, the reality of her failure sinking in. But I didn't care. It wasn't my problem anymore. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. "I'm not here to fix your mess," I said coldly. "You made your choices. I made mine. And I don't need you or this company anymore." She stood up, face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. The arrogant woman who had once looked down on me was now broken. And I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Not after everything she had done. As she walked out of my office, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. Not because I had crushed her, but because I had proved to myself that I was stronger than her. Stronger than anyone who had ever doubted me. I had built something that no one could take away, and in the end, that was all that mattered. They begged. They pleaded. But I didn't go back. I had made it on my own. And that was enough. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their business. I was the one who had come out on top. And as for my sister, well, she learned the hard way that you can't just push people aside and expect them to always come back. Not me. Not ever again. Time passed. Life moved on. And though I had proven to myself that I didn't need anyone, I couldn't help but think about what had happened. My sister's betrayal had left a scar, one that wouldn't heal easily. But I wasn't some vengeful person. I didn't want to carry around hatred for the rest of my life. After all, she was still family. I started thinking about the possibility of rebuilding some kind of relationship, just for the sake of our parents. It was hard to completely erase the years of resentment, but I thought it. Maybe, just maybe, I could try again. Not because I wanted to work with her or fix the family business, but because I was tired of carrying around that weight. Tired of letting her actions control my emotions. I had already proven that I could make it without them, so why not try to at least heal the wound? A few months after that awkward encounter, I decided to reach out. It wasn't easy. I had no idea if she would even respond or if it would make things worse. But I made the decision to send her an email. Something simple. Something that wouldn't expect much in return. I'm not asking for anything. Just wanted to see how you're doing. If you're open to it, I'd be willing to meet. I waited, staring at my phone screen, for what felt like hours, heart racing. The clock ticked by. Then, one day, I received a message. It was her. I've made a lot of mistakes, but if you're willing, I'd like to talk. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to try. I couldn't believe it. She sounded genuine. Her words weren't filled with arrogance or demands. It was raw. She was vulnerable. Maybe she had finally realized how badly she had messed up. So I agreed to meet. We set a time and place. Just a small cafe, somewhere neutral, away from everything that had gone wrong. The day arrived. I walked in, not really knowing what to expect. When I saw her, she looked different. There was no fake smile, no facade. She looked tired, worn down. Her once polished appearance was now more fragile. I don't know why, but I felt a small tug in my chest. Maybe she really had changed. We sat down, exchanged pleasantries, and for the first time in years, we talked. She admitted that everything she had done, the way she had taken control of the business, the way she had treated me, was wrong. She admitted that she had been blinded by ambition, consumed by her desire for power and control. And she was sorry. But I didn't want her apology. I didn't want words. What I wanted was something different. I'm not here to fix things, I said, my voice steady but firm. I'm here because I'm tired of feeling like I'm not enough. I'm tired of being the one who was always pushed aside, always overlooked. And if you truly want to make things right, I need to see it. I need to know that you've really changed. Bah, she nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. But I could tell she didn't quite understand what I meant. She was still stuck in her own world, her own narrow vision of how things should be. I realized then that I couldn't just forgive her for what she had done. It wasn't enough to say sorry. I needed to see the action behind it. So I made her an offer, a challenge. If you will, I would help her. Not out of the goodness of my heart, but because I wanted to prove something to her. Prove that I had what it took to help her succeed, but also that I was the one in control now. I'll help you, I said, but you have to promise me something. This time, I'm leading the way. You follow my lead, and you listen. If you step out of line again, if you try to sabotage me, if you even think about taking control, I'm out, and I won't come back. At first, she hesitated. There was a part of her that wanted to take control again, that wanted to be the one who called the shots. But I saw something in her eyes. The arrogance was gone. There was fear now, fear of losing everything, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She had learned her lesson the hard way, so we agreed. We worked together for the next few months, and it wasn't as terrible as I expected. But there was still tension. I could feel it every time I spoke, every time I made a suggestion. She wanted to push back, but she couldn't. She had learned that I was no longer the quiet one. I wasn't the kid she could dismiss or belittle. But then things started to shift. Slowly, we began to rebuild the business. It wasn't easy. We fought. We argued. But in the end, the work paid off. The business started to grow. People started noticing our efforts. And for a moment, I thought maybe things were really changing. Maybe we could rebuild not just the company, but our relationship too. But then the betrayal came again. I still don't know what went wrong. One day, I walked into the office to find that the plans we had been working on, the ones I had suggested, the ones I had pushed for, had been completely changed without my knowledge. She had gone behind my back and made decisions without consulting me. The work I had put in, the strategies I had carefully laid out, were discarded like they meant nothing. I was livid. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel the anger bubbling up. This was it. I had given her a chance, and once again she had failed. She couldn't help herself. The need for control, the need to be the one in charge. It was too much for her. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked out. This time, there would be no turning back. Later that day, she called. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice pleading. "Please, just come back. We can fix this." But the anger I felt wasn't just from her betrayal. It was from all the years I had wasted trying to make things work with someone who never saw me as equal. It was from all the nights I spent wondering if I was good enough, if I could ever rise to their level. And now I was done. "I gave you a chance," I said calmly, my voice cutting through the line like a knife. "But you destroyed it. You destroyed everything we worked for. And now you're begging me to come back. You'll never have that chance again." Her voice trembled. "Please, don't leave me like this. I need you." But I had learned something over these past few years. I didn't need her. I didn't need her approval. I had built my life without them, and I would continue to thrive without them. So I ended the call, and I didn't look back. The business continued to grow, but she never recovered from what she had done. She begged, she pleaded, but the damage was done. And as for me, I stood tall, knowing I had taken control of my life. I had done it on my own. I didn't need anyone to validate me. Not her, not anyone. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the person who had been rejected or cast aside. I saw the person who had taken everything from the ground up and built something far more successful than she ever could have imagined. She learned, in the end, that you can only betray someone so many times before they walk away. And when they do, there's no going back. My own mother betrayed me. Now she begs for my forgiveness. I was born into a home where love was always measured by favor and obedience. And I learned early on that I would never be the center of my mother's universe. Every morning, I watched her greet my younger brother with a smile that warmed the entire room, while her eyes barely met mine before drifting away. As a little boy, I clung to the hope that someday I would earn her affection and fill the emptiness that I felt, even though deep down I suspected that my worth was forever diminished by comparison. I remember how my mother would fuss over every little thing my brother did, from the way he dressed to the way he spoke, while my own achievements went unnoticed and uncelebrated. In our modest home, the small blessings that were meant to nurture a child's soul were selectively given, leaving me to wonder if I was even worthy of a single kind word. I tried to be helpful and loving, hoping that the sacrifice of my own desires would eventually bring me the care I craved, but nothing ever changed. Even as I grew older and began to understand the dynamics of our relationship, I could never shake the bitter reality that I was seen as an afterthought, a constant reminder of what my mother never truly wanted. School was the only escape from the daily reminder of my inadequacy. Yet even there, I felt isolated by the painful comparisons that came naturally in my family. Every birthday, every school achievement, and every little success was celebrated for my brother with such exuberance that I often felt invisible in my own life. I would sit quietly in class, hoping that someday my efforts would be recognized and that I could finally claim a fraction of the love that was so freely given to him. My teachers, kind though they were, could only do so much, and I longed for a parent's praise, a warm hug, a gentle word of encouragement that I was somehow different from the rest. When I brought home report cards adorned with bright stickers and proud remarks for my brother, I would study my own with trembling hands, trying to decipher if there was any trace of pride in my mother's voice when she mentioned my name. Even during family gatherings, the contrast was painfully apparent as my brother's laughter filled the room while my own voice was reduced to a murmur, swallowed by the cacophony of others' joy. I began to internalize the belief that I was never meant to be cherished, that I was destined to remain in the shadows of a family that prized perfection over sincerity. As I entered my teenage years, the wounds inflicted by my mother's neglect festered into a quiet determination to prove myself, even if it meant forging a path entirely on my own. I dedicated every spare moment to my studies, vowing to rise above the mediocrity that had been thrust upon me, and I poured my heart into extracurricular activities, hoping that success might one day erase the sting of rejection. While my peers enjoyed the comforts of family support, I learned to rely solely on my own strength, pushing myself to excel academically and socially despite the ever-present doubt of my own worth. I remember countless nights spent hunched over textbooks, fueled by a mix of hope and desperation, wondering if any of my efforts would ever be enough to rewrite the narrative of my life. Even as I began receiving accolades and scholarships, the victories felt hollow without the validation of the one person whose approval I had craved all my life. I often lay awake, wrestling with conflicting emotions, gratitude for the success I was building, and a deep-seated resentment for the family that had so carelessly abandoned me. In those quiet moments, the promise of a better future became my only solace, and I resolved to one day step out from behind the shadows of my past and claim the life that I deserved. At the age of 18, when the rest of my peers celebrated their newfound independence, I finally made the decision to leave home. I packed a small bag with the few possessions I had managed to collect over the years and boarded a bus with nothing but the hope of a fresh start in a city where no one knew my name. The journey was both terrifying and exhilarating, a bittersweet escape from a past filled with constant reminders of my inadequacy. In that new city, I found solace in the anonymity of a bustling metropolis, where every face was a story and every street corner promised the chance for reinvention. I enrolled in college on a full scholarship, determined to prove that I could succeed without the crutch of a broken family, and I immersed myself in my studies, leaving little room for the painful memories of home. My new life was filled with challenges, yet every hurdle I overcame became a silent testament to my resilience and an unspoken declaration that I was more than the sum of my past. With each small victory, I felt the shackles of my old life slowly crumble, replaced by the thrilling promise of what I could achieve on my own. College was a time of both discovery and solitude, and I threw myself into my work with a single-minded focus that bordered on obsession. I joined clubs, made friends, and even found a part-time job that helped me cover my expenses, but at the back of my mind, the wounds of my childhood still itched with every smile I saw between others and every careless word I overheard. In lectures and late-night study sessions, I reminded myself that every moment of hardship was paving the way for a future that I would claim as my own. The academic challenges were many, but they were also exhilarating. Each exam passed and every project completed was another brick in the fortress of my independence. I built relationships with mentors and peers who believed in my potential, and slowly I began to see a version of myself that was capable, strong, and deserving of success. Though I never sought out the approval of my estranged family, there were times when I would wonder if my mother had finally come to realize what she had lost. But those thoughts were fleeting, and I soon refocused on the future, a future that I was determined to mold with my own hands. As the years passed, I not only excelled academically, but also began to dream of a career that allowed me to redefine success on my own terms. Graduation day came like a beacon of hope, a moment when I could finally put behind the painful chapters of my past and step into the bright promise of tomorrow. The ceremony was filled with the usual pomp and circumstance, but as I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I felt a surge of pride and liberation that I had never known before. I was no longer the forgotten child. I had become a man who had overcome the deepest betrayals and the harshest neglect. With my diploma in hand and a head full of dreams, I vowed to build a life that was a testament to my hard work and determination. I stepped out into the world with a quiet confidence, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was capable of conquering them. The memories of my mother's dismissive words and my brother's entitled behavior were still there, like dark clouds on the horizon. But they no longer held the power to define me. Instead, they became the fuel that drove me to achieve greatness. And I carried that fire with me as I embarked on my professional journey. The real test of my resolve began when I entered the world of business, a realm where competition was fierce and success was hard-won. I had spent years studying business, theory, and honing my skills, and now I was ready to put everything I had learned into practice. I started from scratch, launching a small tech startup with nothing but a borrowed laptop, a few contacts, and an unwavering belief in my own capabilities. The early days were grueling. I worked long hours, often sacrificing sleep and social connections, determined to turn my vision into reality. I encountered countless setbacks, failed pitches, lost clients, and moments when I questioned whether I was truly cut out for this world. But each obstacle only made me more determined to succeed. Slowly, my startup began to gain traction, and I started to see the fruits of my labor materialize in the form of a growing client base and a reputation for innovation. Every success, however small, was a victory over the past, a silent rebuke to the family that had once deemed me unworthy. As I watched my business begin to take off, I felt a sense of vindication that was both sweet and bittersweet, in knowing that I had built something remarkable without ever receiving the love and support that should have been my birthright. Yet, even as I reveled in my professional triumphs, the ghosts of my childhood continued to haunt me in unexpected ways. Late at night, when the world was quiet and my thoughts were my only companions, I would remember the painful words and actions of my mother, her dismissals, her favoritism, and the crushing weight of my insignificance. I had long ago resolved that I would never allow those memories to control me. But some nights they would resurface with a vengeance, stirring a mix of anger, sadness, and longing. I often wondered what life would have been like if I had been the child she adored, if I had received the nurturing that so many took for granted. The questions were endless and the answers elusive, and I realized that while I had built a successful life for myself, a part of me still yearned for the unconditional love that had been so cruelly withheld. However, I refused to let that yearning distract me from the future I was determined to create, a future built on hard work, integrity, and the undeniable truth that I was more than the sum of my past. As the years went by, my business grew into a thriving enterprise, and I began to attract the kind of respect and recognition that I had always dreamed of, each milestone a step further away from the painful memories of my childhood. Then, one seemingly ordinary afternoon, my phone rang and I saw a name I had not expected, Mum. For a long moment, I stared at the screen, my heart pounding with a mix of apprehension and something I couldn't quite identify. Perhaps it was a vestige of the longing I had buried so deep inside. I hesitated, and then reluctantly answered the call, steeling myself for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. On the other end of the line, my mother's voice trembled as she said, "Daniel, I need your help." Her words were soft, almost pleading, and they carried the weight of years of regret and unspoken sorrow. She explained, haltingly at first, that my brother had once again spiraled out of control, that his reckless behavior had brought our family business to the brink of collapse. "He's lost everything," she admitted, her voice cracking with emotion. "We're in deep trouble, Daniel, and I don't know what to do." I listened in silence, feeling a cold detachment settle over me as memories of past betrayals surged to the surface. It was as if the ghosts of my childhood were right there on the other end of the line, demanding that I confront the pain I had long tried to escape. For several minutes, I sat in stunned silence as my mother continued to beg for my help, her words tumbling out in a desperate plea for salvation. I remembered all those years of neglect and favoritism. Every time I had been told that I was a burden. Every birthday I had spent in the shadows while my brother was celebrated. The bitterness that had once fueled my determination now surged into a tidal wave of anger and resentment, leaving me cold and unyielding. "I'm not giving you a cent," I finally said, my voice low and unwavering, echoing the sentiment that had long been etched into my heart. I told her that Ryan would have to face the consequences of his own choices and that I had no intention of bailing him out, just as I had never been there for him when I needed support. Her silence on the other end of the line was deafening, and I could almost hear the finality in her unspoken words, a resignation that told me my decision was irrevocable. I ended the call abruptly, leaving behind a past filled with disappointment and betrayal, and in that moment, I felt an unexpected surge of liberation as the chains of my old life fell away. In the days that followed, the repercussions of that phone call rippled through the remnants of the family I had once known. News began to spread that the business, built on the legacy of my father and later sullied by my brother's reckless mismanagement, was on the verge of bankruptcy. Employees whispered in hushed tones about the impending collapse, and creditors grew increasingly impatient, demanding answers from a leadership that no longer existed. My mother, once so proud and unyielding, found herself reduced to pleading with former allies and desperate for any form of support, her once commanding voice now quivering with fear and regret. I watched from a distance as the life she had tried to maintain crumbled, each day a stark reminder of the choices she had made and the cost of her favoritism. There were moments when I felt a pang of sadness, not for myself, but for the loss of a family that had been so utterly consumed by its own dysfunction. Yet, even in those moments, the satisfaction of knowing that I had risen above it all kept me resolute in my decision, a silent affirmation that I was finally free from the tyranny of my past. Months later, I received an unexpected invitation to speak at a prestigious business conference, a testament to the success of the company I had built from nothing. The invitation came with accolades and recognition from industry leaders, a far cry from the life I had once known, and it served as a stark contrast to the crumbling remnants of the family business. As I prepared for the conference, I couldn't help but reflect on the long and painful journey that had brought me here. A journey marked by rejection, relentless struggle, and ultimately, a transformation that proved my worth. I recalled the countless nights of solitary work, the sacrifices made in silence, and the bitter taste of every harsh word that had been uttered in my presence. Each memory fueled my determination, reminding me that I had overcome obstacles that no one else could understand. I rehearsed my speech in front of a mirror, my voice steady and strong as I recounted my experiences, not to evoke pity, but to inspire others to break free from the chains of their own pasts. The conference hall buzzed with anticipation as I took the stage, and in that moment, I knew that I had finally reclaimed the power that had once been denied to me. The applause that followed my speech was thunderous, a cathartic release of years of pent-up emotion and unspoken truth. In that moment, as I stood before a sea of faces filled with admiration and hope, I felt a profound sense of vindication. I had not only built a successful business from the ashes of my past, but I had also transformed the pain of rejection into a driving force for achievement. Every tear, every sleepless night, and every harsh word had been a stepping stone on the path to this triumph. I shared my story with raw honesty, detailing the relentless hardships and the bitter betrayals that had once defined me. And I urged the audience never to let the darkness of their past dim the light of their future. As I concluded my speech, the standing ovation was not just a celebration of my success. It was an acknowledgement of the resilience of the human spirit and the power of self-belief. I walked off the stage that day knowing that I had finally silenced the ghosts of my past and embraced the person I was meant to become. Then, one quiet evening as I sat alone in the office of my flourishing company, I received an unexpected visitor, a knock at the door that sent a shiver down my spine and stirred memories I had long tried to forget. I opened the door to find my mother standing there, her once proud posture diminished by years of regret and sorrow. Her eyes, red and swollen from tears, met mine with a vulnerability I had never seen before, and in that moment, I realized that the woman who had once cast me aside was now utterly broken by the weight of her own choices. She stumbled into the office, barely able to utter the words, "Daniel, please, I need to talk." For a long while, I stood frozen, grappling with a surge of conflicting emotions, anger, pity, and a lingering, uncertain compassion. Her presence was a painful reminder of the childhood I had escaped, yet it also symbolized a final, desperate attempt at reconciliation that I was not sure I could ever accept. I motioned for her to sit, my voice measured and distant as I finally spoke. "Why are you here, Mother? After all these years, why now?" Her answer came in a choked whisper, full of remorse and sorrow, as she admitted that everything had fallen apart. Daniel had ruined every last chance she had, and the family business was nothing but a memory of her past mistakes. As she continued, the raw truth of her confession was laid bare. She had spent years trying to mend what she had shattered, but every attempt had only driven us further apart. In that moment, I realized that the pain she inflicted on me was now her own burden to bear, and though a part of me still ached for the child I once was, I knew that my future could no longer be tied to her regret. We talked for hours in that dimly lit office, our conversation punctuated by long silences and the echo of memories too painful to fully articulate. My mother confessed the depths of her failures, the favoritism, the neglect, and the broken promises that had defined our family life. She told me how she had clung to the hope that Daniel would succeed, that his achievements would somehow redeem her shortcomings, and that in doing so, she had unwittingly sacrificed the love I so desperately needed. I listened, my heart a tumult of emotions, as she broke down, apologizing repeatedly for a lifetime of mistakes. Each word she uttered, though filled with remorse, could not undo the years of hurt that had molded me into the person I had become. I remembered all the lonely nights and the crushing weight of feeling unloved, And in that moment, I realized that forgiveness was not something I could easily offer, nor was it something I truly desired. I thanked her for her honesty, but I made it clear that the past could never be rewritten, that the pain she had caused had forged me into a stronger, more determined man. I told her that while I appreciated her remorse, my life was no longer bound by the chains of our shared history, and that my focus was on the future, one that I had built from my own blood, sweat, and tears. Over the following weeks, my mother visited occasionally, each time with the same tearful apologies and desperate pleas for reconciliation. I maintained a careful distance, never allowing her presence to disrupt the life I had so painstakingly constructed. I was cautious in my interactions, aware that true healing would require more than just regret. It would demand accountability and change that I was not sure she could ever provide. I often walked through the corridors of my office, reflecting on the long journey that had brought me here. From a neglected child to a successful entrepreneur who had reclaimed his power. Each step was a reminder that the only person who could validate my worth was myself, and that the scars of my past were the very source of my strength. I continued to pour my energy into my work, knowing that every achievement was a defiant act of self-love in the face of a lifetime of rejection. And as my company continued to flourish, I found solace in the knowledge that I had finally become the man I was always meant to be. Independent, successful, and unburdened by the ghosts of a painful childhood. One crisp autumn day, as the leaves turned a brilliant shade of gold and the air carried a hint of promise, I received news that shook me to the core. Daniel, the brother my mother had cherished above all else, had fallen into deep trouble once again. His reckless behavior had spiraled out of control, and the financial ruin that had once again beset our family business was now threatening the very livelihood of everyone involved. In a desperate move, my mother reached out to business partners and creditors, scrambling to salvage what little remained of the empire she had once taken for granted. The media picked up on the story, and soon headlines spoke of the collapse of the family legacy, a story of betrayal, favoritism, and the inevitable downfall of those who refuse to face the consequences of their actions. I watched all of this unfold from a distance, my heart hardened by years of isolation and pain, knowing that I had been spared the ruin that now consumed them. In that moment, I realized that the cycle of neglect and favoritism had finally come full circle, and that the very mistakes that had haunted my childhood were now exacting their bitter toll on the ones who had once rejected me. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow, for while justice had been served in its own relentless way, the loss was undeniable and irreversible. As the dust settled on the shattered remnants of our family business, I made a final decision that would sever the ties to a past that had long defined my existence. I arranged a meeting with the remaining creditors and business partners, and with the calm assurance of someone who had weathered countless storms, I took charge of the dissolution of the company. I made it abundantly clear that I was no longer willing to be dragged back into the destructive dynamics of a family that had forsaken me. With every signature, with every final handshake, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a symbolic end to the era of neglect, betrayal, and bitter favoritism. I was now the master of my own destiny, unencumbered by the mistakes of the past, and resolute in my commitment to forge a future built entirely on my own merits. I stood outside the old headquarters for one last time, watching as the building that had once represented so many painful memories was prepared for demolition, and I knew that a new chapter of my life was about to begin. In the years that followed, I dedicated myself fully to my own success, pouring every ounce of passion and determination into the business I had built from nothing. I traveled the world, attended conferences, and forged partnerships that propelled my company into new realms of innovation and prosperity. I became a sought-after speaker, sharing my story with audiences who found inspiration in the fact that one could rise from the ashes of neglect and emerge triumphant. Every accolade, every award, every whispered word of admiration from colleagues and competitors alike was a resounding testament to the truth that I was more than the sum of my past wounds. I built a legacy that was defined not by the bitterness of betrayal, but by the strength that had allowed me to overcome it. And as I looked back on the long, arduous journey from a child abandoned by his mother's love to a man who had reclaimed his power and rewritten his destiny, I felt a deep sense of gratitude, not for the hardships themselves, but for the resilience they had instilled in me. I had turned my pain into purpose, and my scars were now badges of honor that told the story of a life lived boldly and unashamedly. Today, as I sit in the quiet of my spacious office overlooking a city that now knows my name, I can hardly believe how far I have come. The voice of a little boy who once yearned for a mother's love still lingers in the recesses of my memory, but it no longer controls me. Instead, it serves as a reminder of the trials I have endured and the triumphs I have achieved, each day reaffirming that I am enough on my own. My mother's regrets and apologies have faded into a distant echo, a relic of a past that no longer has power over my future. I have learned that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, but rather it means liberating oneself from the chains of old wounds. I choose not to dwell on the bitterness, but to celebrate the victory of having built a life defined by my own success and self-worth. In that quiet space between reflection and ambition, I find solace and strength, knowing that every word, every tear, and every moment of pain has led me to this extraordinary present. And so, with a steady heart and an unwavering resolve, I continue to stride forward into the future, leaving behind the shadow of a mother's neglect and a family's betrayal. I have forged a new path, one illuminated by the light of my own determination and the undeniable truth that I was meant for greatness. The scars of my past are now the very lines that map out the landscape of my success, each one a reminder that I have overcome, that I have prevailed, and that I will never again allow anyone to define my worth. I stand as a living testament to the power of resilience and the transformative strength of self-belief. In the end, I did not need their love, and I did not need their approval. I had everything I needed within myself. As the sun sets over the horizon of a life reborn, I smile at the thought of a future where I am finally free to be me, unburdened, undefeated, and undeniably complete.